What do you think an alpha male is?
A confident, assertive leader who knows what he wants and always gets his way. You know, somebody who says things like, get swole and muscle milk and hi, I'm Vin Diesel.
Hello everybody, welcome back. It's been a number of months, a lot of side projects. I am your host, JB Ong, at this wonderful channel that is in a constant state of flux, but also growth, chaos, and order, good things all together. I've come back to you with a final message for the end of the year. Several months ago, there was a gathering of videos that came out across the internet, centralizing around the theme of toxic masculinity, the alpha male. And even though I am delayed in bringing this together, I figured let's sum up the points by triangulating various different videos to convey some of the issues and the truths behind the alpha male phenomenon, and ultimately how it affects systems, how it affects people, relationships, the neglect from both society to men as much as men to other people. So with that said, here we go.
I'm like the alpha wolf, the leader of the pack. Hell yeah, I'm bleeding.
Wildlife biologist named L. David Meach seemed to observe that one wolf emerged as the dominant male. 20 years later, Meach tried to replicate his research in the wild.
Those aren't dominant wolves, those are mommies and daddies. Wolves don't have an alpha hierarchy at all, they're just parents. Stop reading this, I fed you lies. Alpha wolves aren't real.
It was too late. The term had taken on a life of its own. Alpha males are found in chimps, our closest genetic relatives.
First of all, chimps aren't our closest genetic relatives. Bonobos are, and bonobos live in a matriarchal society.
What is it with angry bald guys on the internet just spewing alpha bro bullshit? It's like they lose all their hair and then suddenly they go, okay, it's time to spew some hyper-masculine garbage. Let me tell you something, man. When you do that forced masculinity thing, like I'm a manly man, nobody messes with me, women see right through it. And they laugh. They laugh at those guys when they're not around because they know they're bullshitting. Fake masculinity is basically makeup for men. Women look at guys like Andrew Tate and they see them as a joke. A joke. Fake masculine, it's not what you want to be. Just be who you naturally are.
How many of us have said, I know a ton of great single women, they can't find a date? That's not true. They can't find a date. They can't find a man they find economically or emotionally viable. If we don't make a massive investment in young people and make more economically and emotionally viable men, we're going to see a lack of household formation. We're going to see a decline in the middle class. And we're going to see, quite frankly, just a lot of young men who are terrible citizens. There's a lot of very unfortunate misogyny online that is masquerading as being pro-men. A lot of TikTok celebrities who talk about advocating for men, it's just thinly veiled misogyny.
I'd like for everyone to look at this video from a formation of the masculine or the alpha identity versus how men or masculines interact with each other or other people. Does it become sexual? Is there intimacy there? The lack thereof? And ultimately, how does that type of culture ultimately affect your own intimate relationships that society has told you must exist, like a marriage? And how that continuity of honesty and integrity and accountability creates a more empathetic individual and ultimately a better performing human being.
Two things. One, very seldom in society do we talk about how the expectation of sex was often set by a society controlled by men, and women were just subject to it, you know? And as that has changed, you would hope that now the dynamics would change. But it also makes it seem so one-dimensional. They go like, women, men aren't having the sex that they want to have or wish to have. And I go like, how much sex do they think they're supposed to have? Let's start there. Secondly, like, do they think they're entitled to the sex? And third, and most importantly for me, and I really feel like we don't speak about this enough, is people don't realize how often men are experiencing a lack of intimacy. And the only place that they can experience that intimacy is through sex. We've created a society where men are so afraid to be vulnerable with each other, to be, you know, sensitive with each other, to care for each other, to love each other. You know, even saying that as a guy, you always have to change and be like, you can't just say, I love you. You have to be like, I love you, dog. You know what I mean? You got to throw it, like, you can't just say it. And it's interesting because that is where I do feel women have done a much better job of being there intimately for each other. Not sexually, but intimately. And I think we take for granted how much in society men who say sex is the thing they're not getting are actually struggling with a lack of companionship, of intimacy, of being in a space with a person where they're sharing, you know, everything from serotonin to endorphins to what humans need to feel, you know. And I hope we can change that conversation just a little bit more. I hope we get to the place where guys go, oh, I actually didn't need the sex. I needed to be held. And I live in a society where it's hard to be held unless I'm having sex. Because as guys, you can't just go to a guy and be like, just hold me. True. And I hope the conversation goes there, you know, not just from, well, right to sex. It's like, no, sometimes you just want to be held. There are many sex workers who've talked about this, where they'll talk about how many men will pay them and then say, hey, can we just talk? Can we just sit on the bed and talk? And can you just hold me? Can you just... And I think if we have a little more of those conversations, a few more honest conversations, a few more vulnerable conversations, we may get to a place where it's not just about sex or no sex. It's people actually saying, oh yeah, we are full human beings who require a full spectrum of you know, affection and affections towards us. And in the same way, for many years, great therapists have been saying that women have to be allowed to express that they want and enjoy sex. I think we also have to encourage men in society to go, hey, I want to express and enjoy intimacy despite or apart from sex.
And do you know what's easier than actually asking your wife what she needs to feel emotionally connected or prioritized or loved in this marriage, and then taking steps towards those? It's easier to just mentally label her as too needy, too sensitive. It's easier to convince yourself she's just complaining again, she's too emotional. It's easier to never ask and just default to the way that you want to do things. Things would be easier if she just did marriage your way, right? And I don't know about you, but pride and arrogance and selfishness and ignorance all come easy for me. But do you know what was difficult for me to learn when I was trying to save my marriage? Empathy and validation and emotional intelligence and self-reflection. Those were hard. Prioritizing intimacy is hard. Asking my wife if she feels hurt or neglected or unappreciated because of me is hard. Listening to understand her perspective and not arguing or correcting or getting defensive isn't natural. Intentionality and humility and vulnerability don't come easy for me. Consideration and affection and mutual respect won't come naturally to most of us, but that doesn't make them any less essential. Serving her and selflessness and remembering to love her in the ways that she feels loved most is not always easy. Getting rid of our destructive behaviors like criticism and blame and defensiveness and dismissiveness is difficult. And yet these aren't add-ons in your marriage. It's not take them or leave them. If you choose to not prioritize these, intentional or not, you're signing your divorce papers before they're even drawn up.